Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unraveling Politics. This is a show where we discuss the political news of the day and I provide my analysis. Now, normally I release episodes on Monday. As you know, this is a bit of a special episode. I want to kind of get a state of play ahead of the Republican convention, which will be next week. So, the state of the race. Where we left off at the beginning of the week was, which I recorded at the end of last week, is Biden dropping out, potentially. As I said then, and I'll repeat it now, that's pretty unlikely, and I would anticipate that at this point he's not going to drop out. There have been 11 Democrats that have called on him to go. However, there's been plenty that have said they would support him, like Gavin Newsom of California, Kathy Hochul of New York, Roy Cooper of North Carolina, Phil Murphy in New Jersey, Wes Moore in Maryland, Governor Carney in Delaware, Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, Jamie Harrison, who's the DNC chair, Senator Schumer in New York, Governor J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Bernie Sanders, Chris Coons of Delaware, Chris Coons, and Senator Warnock in Georgia, and John Fetterman in Pennsylvania. However, we might, if you had asked me a couple of days ago, I would have said we are reaching an unsustainable level. However, I would say that's not so much the case. However, the questions are continuing to mount. Nancy Pelosi, the former Democratic leader, has said that time is running short on Biden's decision, even though he has already said that he is staying. With Biden's his team has reported that fundraising has fallen by 50% so far compared to last month, even though they received a lot of donations after the debate. A delegation of senators led by Mark Warner that was supposed to go to the White House to tell Biden to drop out. Looks like that's not going to happen. Haven't heard any news about that. Could still happen at some point. But even then, that would be pretty unlikely to push him out. Pennsylvania Representative Susan Wild, who's not that far from where I am, is concerned about down-ballot effects, which is totally fair because she's running a tight race against a Republican in the Lehigh Valley. So, many are still supporting him, as I've said, but it looks like Biden is seeing a huge amount of pressure from his own party. Now, where you want my opinion is, I think, one is it's unlikely that he's going to be replaced. Two, it's pretty much impossible to replace him without his permission. However, they could put external pressures on him. For example, Democrats could potentially move with either the 25th Amendment or they could try to pursue some sort of impeachment against the president that would remove him from office, that wouldn't necessarily suspend his campaign. However, that would be like the nuclear option, and there's basically no way that that would happen. It would be very damaging to take out Biden now. It would be undemocratic, it would be chaotic, and we wouldn't know who the nominee would be. What's important to note is that swing and non-swing representatives have been calling for Biden to go. Now, how is this important? Well, a lot of representatives might be considering calling on Biden to drop out as a political move so they can say, hey, I called on the president to drop out. He didn't, so that's a decision that's up to him. He made that mistake, and here we are. However, this is something that they're going to have to keep in mind. It's going to be very difficult to go from calling for him to drop out to then switching a couple of weeks or months later telling people to vote for him. He has a lot of support among the 60-member Black Caucus, which is kind of ironic considering Biden is probably one of the most racist people we've ever had as president in recent years. It could really come down to the leadership. Schumer has supported Biden, but Jeffries has stayed silent. If Jeffries comes out against Biden, then it could all be over. But anyway, I don't anticipate that happening, but we'll have to see. Next, the elections for Senate. I anticipate there will be a Republican majority. It will be a narrow Republican majority. I would say it would probably be 52 seats to 48 seats. So right now we're at 51 Democrat, 52-48, 52 Republicans, 48 Democrats. That would make the new Republican leader, because Mitch McConnell is stepping down, the majority leader, and Chuck Schumer would be the minority leader. So with I'm anticipating that West Virginia will go from Democrat to Republican because the incumbent is stepping down. That's pretty much a given. I'm also thinking, so it would make it 50-50. I'm thinking Ohio, Sherrod Brown is going to lose re-election there. And then I'm also thinking John Tester in Montana will also lose his seat. Tester and Brown in Ohio have a decent shot at holding on. It's not great, but it is possible. I would rate both of them as toss-ups. If that's the case, then it would be a 50-50 Senate. It would be equally divided. And in that case, the vice president, whoever he or she may be, will break the tie. And speaking of vice president, there's unlikely to be an imminent announcement from Donald Trump because of Biden's bad press. They want to keep Biden in the news. This is kind of the opposite of what happened in 2020, where Biden was the one that was in the basement. Now kind of Trump is, although he's not necessarily in the basement. He's just kind of out of the news more recently. They're trying to let the woes against against the sitting president kind of build up in the media. As for the other Senate races, speaking of which, they're probably going to pick Marco Rubio. That's my thing. That's my guess. They've been kind of floating him. Trump really needs to win with Hispanics, and Rubio grew up in Nevada for a brief period of time, so he could help pick up Nevada and Arizona. So speaking of the Nevada Senate race, I anticipate Democrats are leaning in theirs, as in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Nevada for president, it looks like that's going to go Republican, as with pretty much every swing state. I would say that Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Arizona, maybe not so much New Hampshire, but that's basically every swing state. And once you have that, that's basically that's it. That would mean Trump being president. And considering I do expect a narrow Democratic majority in the House, considering the chaos that we've had, we would see a divided government. We might see a Republican majority in the House, but there would be a narrow one like we have right now, and that would still be very chaotic. As for the overall, President Biden's job approval is 39%. It's minus 18.4, so it is 18 points lower than the disapprove. That is record lows in terms of a president running for re-election. On the generic ballot, which is basically any Democrat versus any Republican, if you're asked, are you going to vote for Democrats for Congress or Republicans for Congress? Republicans are at 45%, Democrats are at 44%, so that's well within the margin of error. Another thing I wanted to note was the right track versus wrong track. This is something that pollsters have been asking since 2009. So they say, do you think the country is headed in the right direction or in the wrong direction? Now, since 2009, right direction has never had a lead. So that's something to keep in mind. As of right now, 67% of Americans think we are headed on the wrong track. 23% say we're headed on the right track. So, at this time in 2012, the difference was between right and wrong was minus 31%. So 31% of Americans in July of 2012, 31% more thought we were on the wrong track than the right track. That sounds like a lot. In July of 2016, it was 39.6%. So almost 40%. So that was 8 points higher. Remember, Obama won in 2012. The Hillary Clinton, who was kind of like the incumbent, did not win in 2016. And then in 2020, Trump was running for re-election, and it was minus 44. So 44 points, people believe we were headed in the wrong track. Now, you could say some of that was COVID, possibly. But the point is that was very, very high. Today, it's even higher. It's at 44.3%. Yes, that's within the margin of error between the two. But the point is we are at 2020 levels of disapproval of the direction the country is going. Even though things are much better now than they were in 2020, and nobody can convince me otherwise, because back then we had record high unemployment. Yes, inflation was low, but lots of people didn't have jobs, and we also had a virus that was killing people, running rampant across the country. So, the only other thing I really have to mention is, as I said, is Biden is trailing in every swing state. Even in Pennsylvania, a poll according to Bloomberg, this was a bit of an outlier, had Trump at 51%, Biden at 44%. That would be a bit of a shock, but the point is they're showing that Trump has a narrow but stable lead in almost every swing state. And now that it's been a few weeks since the debate, we can definitely see there has been a bit of a decline in Biden's polling. And that's really no surprise. The gap is about 3% now, and before the debate, it was about 0. So, as I said, overall, Trump is ahead by 3.3%, which is right on the margin of error, according to Real Clear Politics. And as of this time 4 years ago, in July of 2020, Biden was ahead 8.7%, that's an 11-point swing. And in July of 2016, Hillary was ahead by 4.7%, so that is an 8-point swing. So we've gone from Democrats ahead by 8.5 and 4.5 to the Republican candidate ahead by 3.3, and that's pretty impressive. Of course, there's plenty of time for that to change, but as I've noted, the electorate is pretty stuck, and I don't anticipate that changing anytime soon. So, in this short episode, as we prepare to wrap it up, the overall takeaways is that this is now Trump's race to lose. I would be very, very skeptical of Biden having a chance of winning. I would say at this point it's probably between 20 and 30%, and that seems like a pretty good amount. It's pretty fair if you ask me. I wouldn't say it's less than 20%, but I definitely wouldn't say it's 50-50 anymore. And the reasons for that is because not only just a debate performance, but he is underwater. He's well underwater, even less than Trump was. And Biden is probably more unpopular than even Hillary was, and she was very unpopular. She was a somewhat strong candidate in terms of her credentials, but not that great considering she was plagued by corruption scandals. Biden doesn't have so much corruption, it's just old age. And unlike Hillary, where you could kind of shake off the corruption scandals, and unlike Trump, where you could shake off some of his problems where that could be changed, old age, you just can't change. He's not going to get any younger. There's nothing they can do about it. They can try and spin it, but everybody knows he's getting older. The only advantage for them would be that Trump is also old, but Trump doesn't look or sound as old as Biden does. So as I said, the Senate, I would expect a Republican majority. And in the House, that's really too close to call. If you'd asked me a few months ago, I would have said a Democratic majority was pretty solid. Now I would say it could go either way, but it's not. It's going to be pretty tight. So what would that mean going forward? Well, in the immediate future, that doesn't mean any changes for us. But at the start of the next year, the start of the next Congress in 2025, there would very likely be there's a very good chance of a Republican trifecta, which is a complete control of the federal government, which a lot of people are very, very concerned about. And I would be as well, because that would mean Project 2025 has a much better chance of being implemented. Something I want to talk about later. Basically, it is a plan to take over the entire federal government. That's something that Trump has tried to distance himself from. But, as I was saying, that would mean that Democrats would have very little power to oppose this Republican administration. They would have some control in the Senate because there would be the filibuster, but Republicans could always abolish it. Neither party has done it yet, has fully abolished it, but it could definitely happen. So if I was Democrats, I would worry not so much about winning. I wouldn't say abandon the hope of winning the presidency, but I would say try and put most of your attention on trying to have a stable opposition, be able to put a strong opposition to a Republican administration. That would be my advice. And if I was a Republican, I would say keep piling the pressure on Biden, but not so much that Biden actually drops out. Because I think any other Democratic candidate would probably do better than Biden, whether that be Newsom or Harris. You don't want Biden to drop out because the danger with that is now Trump's the old man in the race. and they want to keep Biden as long as possible. That is all I really have today. This was a bit of a special episode. Next week, we'll have to see what comes up. There is some things I want to talk about, especially international news, and we'll see what else pops up. Next week is the Republican convention. We will get some more inflation report data. I do not have that out as of right now. Hopefully inflation's a bit lower. Jerome Powell seems cautiously optimistic that rates could be cut sometime this year. It would probably only happen one time, but if it happens before the November election, that could definitely benefit the president. However, those are apolitical decisions. Those decisions are not made by those decisions. They don't take politics into account. So that is everything I have today. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.